Hi, this is Peter Hans, and welcome to this week's episode of Between Two Chains. Today's a little bit of a different episode. I'm joined by someone I've known for the past couple of years, who's really accomplished and very smart in fintech and increasingly blockchain. His name is James Healy. He is the president of Digital Disbursements, which is a digital payments provider. He also runs his own investment firm, JFH Capital, and most notably, he's adjunct professor of finance and business economics at the Marshall School of Business at USC, the University of Southern California. Um, at USC, he's actually bringing and co-directs the school's blockchain efforts, which is something that I think is we're going to increasingly see across not only top tier institutions in the U.S. like USC, but across higher education. We talk a lot about what blockchain and digital assets means for USC, how they're looking at it, how they're tackling it across different aspects of the university ecosystem, from engineering to business and finance to law. And I think in a world where we're increasingly looking for use cases in the future of blockchain and digital assets, this is a really healthy and frankly just very interesting discussion about what the future may hold. So this commentary is not intended to be investment advice, investment research, or recommendation. Please consult your investment professional for your own circumstances, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Peter Hans, and welcome to this week's episode of Between Two Chains. My guest this week, I'm really excited to talk to James Healy. James is a professor at USC Marshall School of Business, also the president at Digital Disbursements, and he's the Economic Advisory Council member for the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. So, James, nice to see you again. How are you?
Great, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were catching up before we started recording, and it's been a little while since we've chatted. So, um, hope things have been well, and would I think as a starting point, I would love to hear, kind of what you're doing with USC, how the institution is looking at blockchain as a technology, and how it views its role and its growth, and or how the technology can help USC achieve its goals as well.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to do it. Excited to. I'll give you my background at USC, and then also standard disclaimers, my opinions, not the opinions of the school or my company or the Fed, and all that fun stuff. And
Yeah,
I am an investor in ARCA, which love being an investor in ARCA. But just throw that out there as well.
appreciate that.
So
Oh,
I
and
started teaching.
yeah, yeah. I was going to say before, I'm just interested in this, so I kind of wanted to get into it and hear your answer. But I guess for the purposes of the audience, maybe just introduce yourself a little bit and provide any background too, and then we can get into USC because I was taking that for granted a little bit.
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah, so I've been in the fintech world for last 10-ish years. So after business school, worked at GE Capital, focused in fintech, M&A strategy, looking at fintech companies, really on the debt and lending side. And that was back when Lending Club was going public, and on deck and Prosper and all these new business models. And I ended up working for a company, left GE Capital, worked for a company called FastPay, which is an amazing company that did lending and payments in digital media. Um, Followed my now wife to LA and joined FastPay, which was great. And then I worked for Carl Icahn for a few years, going kind of back and forth East Coast and his auto group, but launched a lending business where we were leasing vehicles to Lyft and Uber drivers, which is actually a fantastic model. We owned 40% of Hertz. We had Pep Boys and a couple other assets to fix the cars, and then we were leasing them to Lyft and Uber drivers. So it's kind of, own the car, lease it to the drivers, then the maintenance and the kind of full cycle there, which is interesting. Um, and then after after that, I came back and have been working at Digital Disbursements, which is a digital payment company. Dare I say, a Web two digital payment company, and in the legal settlements space primarily. But PayPal, class action lawsuit, used to get a check in the mail. It was slow, it's expensive, and all of those things. And now we facilitate that with digital payment options, so PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, prepaid card, ACH, whatever formats are available there, US and globally. So I've been doing that, and then I've been teaching at USC, which is how I kind of got into the blockchain ecosystem for the last 7 years now. And it really started and it has been a fintech class. So it started, and the idea of the class was just to give students exposure to different areas of fintech. And the catalyst was I have 9 younger brothers and sisters. So as the oldest of 10, my seventh youngest brother finished school and was going into real estate, and he had no idea about real estate fintech. And I had talked to him and said, you don't need to be like the guy on the cutting edge or go into real estate fintech. You're supposed to be like a cool, 21, 22-year old coming in the industry, like know what's hot. And the fact he didn't know anything, to me, that felt like we weren't exposing him to the cutting edge technology in universities. And he went to a very reputable school. Um, so I then had to put my money where my mouth was and say, okay, I'll help actually make some of the change here. So approached USD with a friend, pitched a fintech course, which they thankfully approved, and it's been fantastic. We get about auditorium full, 75 students a semester, and the class is an exposure class. So we'll do one class on alternative lending. So I'll teach the first half, and we'll bring in a senior person from SoFi. Then we'll do payments and bring in someone from there's a great company called Exactuals in LA that does payments in the entertainment space and movies. Or we'll bring in like head of North America for PayPal. And we just go through each class, kind of gets the students exposed to what's happening in different ecosystems in fintech. And then, if they love it, the kids have gotten internships, they've gotten jobs off of the speakers that come. Other people are just interested and never want to touch fintech in their life, but just think it's, something cool to get exposed to while they're in school. So it's really a bit, is there for anyone. There's some deep dives, but it's really that exposure. And actually, in the blockchain world, when I first taught the class, I was going back to look at the syllabuses. In 2016, we had this big payments class, and there was like a little sliver that covered Bitcoin. Is almost like this little one-off. And then all of a sudden, over the years, it gets bigger, Ethereum. Then all of a sudden, my alternative lending class is now talking about how SoFi disrupted student loans. And now it's about, DeFi, CeFi, hey, let's look at make or die and these other different things. So it's been
Hmm.
amazing as that ecosystem has grown, all of the classes now have really incorporated more and more blockchain. And the school, continues to support that. And we actually have 9 blockchain related classes in the business school now. There's 8 in the engineering school, but it's just continued to swell as this whole industry has gained momentum.
Huh. And from a business school standpoint, is this all MBA or undergrad business school as well?
It's both. It's about I want to say there's a few more undergrad classes than MBA.
Okay.
But it's really the business school as we've looked at it. So the dean at USC recently came from Wharton,
Yep.
and as USC has these big initiatives that are called the frontiers of computing, which the president is pushing. So it's AI, quantum, blockchain. We look at things that are really going to change the world over the years to come. So blockchain has been a big push, not just at the business school, but across USC. I think that's one of the really interesting places that when I look at it as a school like USC, the opportunity they have, it's not just in the business school, but they actually graduate the second most computer and information science degrees in the US every year. So like taking that intellectual capacity, combining it with business, combining it with being in LA and the creator economy. They have the School of Cinematic Arts, which is doing some really interesting things as well. It's the whole little ecosystem, alumni funding, people in the community supporting. That's what's really interesting about education today, from my perspective, is it's not that old like, hey, I sit in front of a class for an hour and just, dictate to people what I think. It's really this kind of, incubation hub now that happens in a community, not just within the school walls either, but engaging the community, engaging industry. I've had speakers that, even now there's a speaker who's like in high school who's this amazing developer who's coming to speak. I mean, it's really
Wow.
amazing how we've expanded what the traditional kind of thought process has been, but it's really just get the kids exposed, get them a foundation to think through things, and then let them run and take off with it.
Huh. The so you said originally that your exposure to, I guess, the blockchain and digital assets came via USC. So came via the kind of fintech course at university through Bitcoin, and then just kind of learning through that means. Is
Yeah,
that?
that essentially that probably was the catalyst for me. That's been one fun thing about it is at the time I was working for that payments company, but really just more traditional payments.
Okay,
So in the class, needing to stay up on new things, that's what kind of got me into
got
the
it.
original Bitcoin and the book. And having speakers come in to talk to the students at the same time, I'm like, taking notes in the back of myself, like, this is fast. This is great stuff.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
wild.
my first experience probably was through the class. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, you don't hear a lot about, introduction through like a university setting, but hopefully we get more and more of that in the future. That's really cool. Interesting. Um, and then so explain to me, I guess, what the blockchain related efforts at USC are going to sit parallel to the fintech. I mean, obviously there's some overlap there, but yeah, explain to me kind of what you'll be looking at, and then I understand also there's kind of some outside, whether it's like corporate involvement or I mean, just talk about the effort a little bit more.
Yeah. I think right now the effort is it's really the catalyst has been this amazing donation and generosity from the Van Ex. So Cynthia and Jan Van Eck donated. The school announced in February this year a $5 million gift to fund the Van Eck Digital Assets Initiative. So that's kind of the cornerstone of the efforts that are happening. So that provides, and now we have classes and we have funding, but helps fund a big conference that's happening June 10th or I'm sorry, November 10th and 11th on campus, which is going to be great. Keynote speakers, Kathy Wood, and there's some other people, we're still confirming, but I think there's 30 plus people confirmed right now. And again, that's for USC, but also for the community at large. Other schools, we connected the blockchain clubs there and invite them. The LA community, we think it's going to be outstanding, and feel free to go to the I can send you the website if you want to put a link in there. But register; it's free for people to register. That'll be on USC's campus. But conference, classes, funding research, events, series that will have people come and speak. All of these things. It's really. I just spoke on a panel that was sponsored by Chainlink on campus. It's really how do we give the students more exposure and just let them run with it, let them connect with people in the community. And I think that's the primary thing from the business school. Then also there's actually at Viterbi School of Engineering, there's hardcore research going on. One of the researchers, the professors there, is actually the sixth most published blockchain researcher. If you look at Google Scholar, so they're actually looking at decentralized systems. I know one of them's advising Coinbase. There's another guy that advises Amazon. I mean, there's so much going on in that ecosystem, and some of that's like real deep, nerdy, cryptography, deep in the technology, which I think is fantastic. Exactly where you'd want the engineering school to be. And they actually have a minor for blockchain now, which I believe is one of the first minors. They've had it for a few years. But if you're an
Hmm.
engineering student at USC as an undergrad, you can go and I believe it's a 4 course minor to add on to whatever you're doing, and they tie it into AI as you look at fraud in terms of in this little ecosystem, which is interesting. But they've done a lot of great things with it. And then I think also outside of that, connecting with other places that aren't exactly like when I think of it, I kind of think I'm using a very broad definition of blockchain. Anything that's kind of protocol, NFTs, metaverse, crypto, like
Sure.
all of that. I'm just putting in the bucket. And then I think that that's in and of itself somewhat limiting. Because when I think of metaverse, I'm thinking like Ready Player One, like that level. But if I look at there's it's called the Institute of Creative Technologies, which is housed in the School of Engineering. That's actually in Marina Del Rey. So they have about 50 PhDs that just sit there and work on virtual worlds. And right now, a lot of it's been working with the U.S. Army to work on PTSD. So basically, what they do is they put these veterans back in Afghanistan with a therapist with them, and they can actually experience the trauma again in a way that they wouldn't be able to if they're just talking to someone. And they've gotten really positive results on how that's evolved. And now what they're doing is they're currently in the process of recording locations in Ukraine. And then what they do is they're going to take the refugees from Poland and London and the US and different places, put them back in the town square with the people from their town and a therapist and talk through the trauma of what that was like and what those people are going through. So that's not like metaverse when I'm kind of talking about metaverse, but I
Yeah.
think that kind of technology is foundational to where this will be, and you make up how many years we're going to get to get there. And I think some of that stuff, even though it's not blockchainy, is so applicable and interesting to involve in this ecosystem. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, and that is in essence I guess the user experience and the UI side of it, right? So if you look at the blockchain as like,
Exactly.
essentially the underlying, I always compare it to the internet, right? And if you look at the actual, kind of backbone of infrastructure of the internet, you still needed a user interface to have people like interact with it, easily use it at scale. So when you talk about metaverse, right? That's almost like the UI technology side of it, which is a lot different than building a web browser, right? Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
interesting, interesting. So when and I'm really intrigued by this because every time I think about university involvement, obviously I'm always coming about it from the investment side. So I'm always thinking about kind of the endowment and how are they approaching it, what are they
Yeah,
investing in, right? But actually thinking about it from you know, at the highest level university president, I suppose, right, saying, okay, we actually can make a real concerted effort here and either, differentiate our school or give us some sort of competitive advantage. And USC's, clearly very interesting because, you have, all kind of the entire entertainment industry there. And I think they're, that is they've been, that sector of the economy, I guess you could say, has been pretty forward looking because so much of their core business has been disrupted over the years. From like Napster to I don't know, Ticketmaster, anything, right?
yeah,
The way in which we sell music or streaming, and what blockchain and more specifically, I think NFTs allows is different levels of fan engagement, of monetization, of ownership of creatives, right? So, is that like an approach that USC thinks about? Is like if an NFT is really just kind of like a wrapper, and I mean I'm talking specifically about NFTs, but obviously it can
yeah.
go well beyond that. Protecting IP, right? How does that work? How does that flow through? Like, do you see this eventually flowing through the law school or other areas too? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's really
I think
interesting.
yeah, I think we do it right. It basically touches all schools, right? I mean, to your point about the law school, what are DAO structures? Can you be sued if you vote in a DAO? I mean, and
Mm,
all of those things
mm,
that are currently swirling around the industry. Um, but I do think when I think of just like all these schools, you kind of like think about your competitive advantages. And MIT has been working with the Boston Fed on CBDCs, right? So does it make sense for USC to try to be the CBDC school? Probably not. But being based in LA, as you highlighted, creator, creative economy, I think that's huge. I think there's a real competitive advantage for us, and not just to be the LA school, but really to be a global leader and use that as our launch pad. And I also think about when I think about 10 years from now, is people play around with NFTs, right? I mean, it feels like that's a foundational block of where the economy is going to
mm,
have authentication, be able to transfer, value digitally. When I look at that, like, yeah, maybe someone's playing around with NFTs now. It's more artwork, but that, developer in the third startup from now could create something that's in a totally different industry, but using that underlying technology. And they're learning and they're experimenting and exploring with that today. in the entertainment ecosystem. But that, when you look at the knock on where that goes, I think that's what gets me so excited. I feel like we have this foundational base that's such an advantage in the relationships in the industry to really take advantage of it. And then the knock on, it's just kind of like sprawls outside of that. So I think it's the business school, and we're really passionate about it, and we'll continue to take what we think is a leadership position in it.
Mhm.
The engineering school, School of Cinematic Arts, I think it's really important for entertainment. The law school, I mean, there's no shortage of opportunities to play in this in different ways and to connect them. It should be, we're partnered with the engineering school. We're partnered with these different, schools. We have whatever co-speakers with the law school about what does DAO look like. What if you're an engineer and you're coding? What if you're a business student and you're starting the business? What if you're the actual law student, you're advising? I mean, all of it's so interconnected. That's what's really exciting about, one of these big research institutions like USC, is they actually be able to combine all the forces and put it all together so that it makes the most value for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, so you have this large kind of institutional push at the top. What is the student uptake like? How have you seen that change over the years?
So I would say the students are probably not even probably, I would say the students are definitely more advanced than the university. So the university moves, slower than the students even a few years ago in my classes. I mean, I'd have some students from Asia that would just go through like a list of different protocols that they're really excited about, and literally I'm like scribbling notes as they're telling them to me. The students, I mean, they just have so much passion, and it kind of aligns with that like young ethos of I'm going to disrupt the world. Things don't, we don't have to just be in the legacy system, and we're going to create a new system ourselves. So I think the students have been pumped. There's a club called Blockchain at USC. I mean, I think there's over 1,000 members in the Discord now. I mean, they're helping launch this conference and really taking a leadership role in the VanEck Southern California Blockchain Conference in November. They have biweekly speakers events. They have a research team of like 100 people contributing, and they're pumping out research. I mean, the students are just, completely excited about it. And a lot of them I talk to are like after these panels, or I go to some of the sessions, and I would say a good portion of them have launched or are launching their own businesses.
Hmm.
So it's amazing, and they're getting funded. I mean, one group got funded by Sequoia. It was the first time that Sequoia, India, China, and America is invested in the same deal. So I mean, it's not like
Wow.
a couple of like kids playing around with like tinkering in their basement. I mean, this is real real stuff happening. One of the other alumni, I think he graduated, let's say 2 3 years ago, but he co-founded Autograph, which is Tom
Yeah.
Brady's NFT company. He's this I think he's CEO there. So I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like young people playing around. I mean, these are like movers and shakers making things happen and getting real partners to fund these things.
That's crazy. Wow. I mean, so I'm very interested in kind of like what younger people think about the space and like what attracts them to it, right? Because one of the things that you see and just go to like crypto Twitter is, how dogmatic everyone is, and they say, like, Bitcoin only people who, everything has to be fully decentralized, and whatever. There's probably like Solana maxis out there, and obviously ETH people, and everyone just kind of
Yeah,
like bickers all the time. Is that kind of an environment you see at USC, or is it much more collaborative and like open-minded? Yeah, because that, I mean, that's a leading indicator for where we go in the future, right?
yeah. I mean, my experience has been very collaborative, and I think the students, find opportunities and are looking for them. Um, and this is just one of the biggest, if you put yourself back and you think about mobile and other places, I'm sure the students at the time in schools were thinking, oh man, I'm going to go for this, and this is cutting edge technology, and there's an infinite amount of opportunities.
Mhm.
This just happens to be the big technology shift where all these students happen to be at the right place at the right time and have, resources available. So I haven't had a lot of people be like Bitcoin maxis or like really push, although I'm sure there's some of that. But for the most part, it's been let's brainstorm together. How do we help each other? I know this person, this VC. I worked with this partner before. You should connect with them. I mean, incredibly collaborative, and everyone's trying to increase the pie with each other, not kind of take each other out or be super dogmatic and prove each other wrong. It's a
Mhm.
very much, minds are open and want to explore together.
Are there certain?
It's super refreshing. Yeah,
It's super what? I'm sorry.
I said it's incredibly refreshing. It's
Oh
great
no, I
to
would
be a
imagine
part of.
so. Yeah, no, that's. I mean, that's awesome. What when they talk about being collaborative and solving problems, and obviously like creating businesses and or protocols to do that. Like, what problems are you seeing people most interested in solving, or what like sector or subsector are people going down after? Is it about like payments? Is it gaming? Is it metaverse? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, I'd say all of the above. I would say gaming's big. So USC Games is consistently ranked the top ranked gaming program in the U.S. So that's
Huh.
a partnership between the engineering school and the School of Cinematic Arts. So there's a huge gaming presence, and then you have like when you're down here, you have the riots and other people of the world that
Yeah.
are in LA. So there's great partnership there in terms of exploring. Um, but gaming, and then some. I mean, one of the great founding teams came out of ETH Sign, which is basically like how do you make smart contracts easy on Ethereum and go through
Hmm.
that. So it's a little bit more technical. It's kind of pushing toward mass adoption. How do you make this available for more people? But it's everything from gaming. Obviously, NFTs is a big place where people play around with. Um, Talk to someone that's doing like identity management stuff. If you think of
Hmm.
like
Sure.
Vitalik Soulbound and like some of those things people are exploring there. So it's literally all over the map. I mean, there's just everywhere you talk, these different students are exploring different things that align with their passions, which is great.
Yeah, and I'd imagine depending on what school they're coming out of, they're probably focused on different problems, right? So
Exactly.
that cross collaboration is interesting. So where do you see this? Where do you see this going?
I mean, I think when I take a step back, I think it's really interesting because the university structure is this traditional structure that's been around for hundreds of years, um, and now in today's day and age, you can effectively YouTube and learn anything, not just this stuff, but anything
Anything?
at a
Yeah.
university level. Yeah. So the question is, how do you actually add value to the university, to these students, and to the community, and help push this? And I think that's what we're trying to do is we know that people should self educate. You do the boot camps and all that kind of stuff. You'll watch the YouTubes. I mean, I'm doing crypto Twitter and like just like everyone else and watching those things to get your knowledge base up. But how do we create this like hub for knowledge and innovation where we're connecting the students of different schools, connecting with the industry, leveraging our space in LA to really kind of like create an advantage, funding mechanisms. There's relationships with different capital sources, VCs, more mature capital sources, accelerator program out of the entrepreneurship school. So it's bringing all that together and saying like this is how we help build the hub and make ourselves like put ourselves on the map and really differentiate ourselves. Like if I'm trying to compete with, hey, I can teach Solidity better than the next university, better than
Mhm.
a boot camp, better than like YouTube, you know, there's no value there, and people shouldn't be paying tuition to just get that. It's all these other things and kind of connecting the whole ecosystem. That's what gets me really excited. And I would
Yeah.
say the students are pumped and the industry is pumped. When you talk to people, the School of Cinematic Arts, they have this entertainment technology center, which is a bunch of like CTOs and other people at some of the big gaming houses at the studios. Like they love it too, and they know their business is going to change. Not exactly sure where, but they love collaborating. They think about these kids as future leaders as well. So anywhere from like the top people of studios to like your YouTuber that's web 3 appetite to the moon and just like wants to get in this ecosystem, like all of those people are looking at universities and saying, hey, you're this hub of talent with people that have a lot of interest and appetite and capacity, and how do we figure out how to work on this together?
Yeah, because I'd imagine there's, I mean, one, it's obviously an incredible tool for recruitment, right? Just building those partners. But also, I mean, just the sheer volume of research that's conducted, and having the pulse on what the future, like this is like the definition of skate to where the puck is going type business. So it gives you like firsthand
Exactly.
insight in that, and from many different perspectives. So yeah, how are you guys thinking about, and maybe this isn't terribly relevant at this point in time, but um, like working with outside organizations, and they could be like for-profit entities, or potentially other schools, or not-for-profit entities. Like how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, I mean, it's been great with the Van Eck gift. Kind of gives us
Mhm.
an initiative on campus, somewhere to kind of circle the wagons and have a hub and home for it. So that's obviously one partnership, the philanthropy there. But the conferences, having panelists come from all these different companies and speak, looking at advisory board for the institute in the business school, which will be great to get different people's community, get people from gaming and DeFi and all these
Mhm.
different ecosystems, NFTs, and kind of combining that. And then I think there'll be pointed different events throughout the year, partner with the blockchain club, events specific to the business school. Engineering has events, hackathons. I mean, it's kind of all the blocking and tackling. The more, we are kind of like somewhat of a model is like take action, like host the events, the contacts that happen in those places. Like you never know which doors get open or which contacts are made, but take action and think about things differently. There's a great professor, his name's Nate Fast. I mean, he actually comes to us from the psychology perspective and is looking at ethical leadership and what does
Mhm.
that look like in the metaverse. And so he's part of this center
Interesting.
called the Neely Center that's really looking at, okay, should, if a metaverse, quote unquote, in the future, should there be a portion of that where the data is public domain, and universities or other, like, you know NGOs can use the data and think about how they use it in terms of acting benevolently and digesting it, versus in today's ecosystem where they're kind of closed gardens. So some of that stuff is really interesting and fascinating to think about. And as the dialogues of metaverse or blockchain or crypto kind of continue to evolve, the university, again, my opinion, won't place a specific bet on technology. It's how do we make sure we stay aligned with, like, the building blocks, like
Mhm.
NFTs. I'm not placing it on NFTs, but that, you know, authentication, ownership, like that seems obvious that that's really important. So how do we make sure we're partnering with people around that? How do we become experts in that? Teach the students that, and then they run with it in whatever direction they run. So it's kind of that foundational set that we give them, and not bet on like ETH versus Solana or any of those types
Of
of
course,
bets.
yeah.
Yeah,
It yeah, it's much more fundamental in kind of the infrastructure build out than it is, and yeah, and
yeah.
it's what are you seeing other like similar schools, conduct efforts like this, or do you think you guys are pretty far ahead?
We think that we're doing a good job, although I guess most people don't really think we're doing a good job.
Yeah,
But there is, I mean, a lot of the big schools are all going after it because everyone sees the same, like, massive opportunity.
yeah,
Um, and I think when you look at it, CoinDesk just did a ranking, and we were actually like 14th in the U.S. and 43 globally. The Asian schools do a fantastic job with the education. Um, in, like, all rankings, it's like they weight certain things and, like,
sure, sure, sure.
all that. But when you look at it, it actually is interesting to look at what other schools are doing in the dialogues. But I think
Hmm.
a lot of schools are looking at it in the schools, your MITs, your Stanfords, Berkeley, Cornell. I mean, there's some schools that have really great programs. And I think over time there'll be more specialization. Where I think right now
Right.
things are still broad, and then you'll get to, like, again, us on leaning more into creative economy, in kind of like picking a lane a little bit and being the best at what you can be the best at.
Hmm.
Um, I think that'll make sense as the industry continues to grow and evolve.
Yeah, 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 definitely pursuing, competitive advantages, I guess, not unlike any other university initiative. Um, Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting. So then I guess, personally, what are you excited about it, and how, if at all, has that changed, you think, as a result of your position at USC?
I think that so I'm like fintechy nerd guy. And so I lean into more of that when I look at like DeFi space and
Yep.
where it gets disrupted in finance. So I think there's a cross section there, where you're the creator economy and there's so much opportunity in LA for that. So I've been lucky to kind of get more brought up on NFTs and other places that I probably wouldn't pay as much attention to, just being
Hmm.
in the USCC. Um, and then also like when I think about that world, where do things evolve from a finance place to enable that? So, today most DeFi is collateralized, right? I put in $10 of whatever
Sure.
X and I get $6 out, right? So it's all over
Hmm.
collateralized. But in the future, as that matures and to enable that kind of creator economy, the Web3 world, you know, stable coins seem to be very obvious place to play there, which I kind of put in the fintech angle of it. Lending that's not collateralized, right? When I check out and I want to buy something for $100, am I
Hmm.
able to actually borrow against that and
Hmm.
borrow my $100? Like I can buy, whatever tires at a location, or if I want to go to the store and buy a shirt, I can put on credit. So I think those types of things where it's actually the finance to enable the creator economy, that becomes really exciting to me. And I feel like that we're just like scratching the surface of today.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it definitely. I mean, one of the major benefits of blockchain, right, is increasing the velocity of assets, and turning basically all assets into potential M1, which is really really powerful.
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you what's your take on where we are now? And I'll use this term kind of like broadly and let you interpret it however you want. But like, look at DeFi. Like, where do you think we are now versus where we might be in 5 or 10 years? And maybe you say that DeFi doesn't matter and it'll just be kind of like blockchain based, all applications issued by like centralized banks and financial services firms, which is very possible too, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah. So I think, again, my own opinion, I think that we will be, more. I don't think the U.S. Again, this has nothing to do with my role at the Fed. That's just my personal opinion. I think it'll be a while before there's any CBDC. I think that
Got it.
they've kind of the positions they've taken, as I'm reading it, will lean into USDC and these other things, as a proxy. There's not a lot of benefit from them issuing it directly.
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So I think yes, I think it'll continue to be private, not be directly from central banks, at least in the U.S. Although obviously China and other places will be different. But I think generally there's still so much to be learned, and I don't think big players will get in, and I mean like big institutional players. You see the BlackRock announcement, some of that stuff, but I don't think there'll be huge institutional money that comes in until things
Hmm.
stabilize, and not just like the price stabilization, but I think when you get like headline risk of like the hacks that happened,
Yeah.
bridge hacks and all these other things. I think that the security has really got to get a lot stronger, which I think, whatever time period that happens over. But I think while the security gets better and there's more use cases, a la like point of sale financing when I'm buying things, I think that will really enhance in just the user experience. I mean, it's still, that test of can I give my mom or, send my mom money and can she use it? Like Venmo is so
Totally.
effective because you can send it to anyone, right? It's on an
Easy.
antiquated system and it's just over the top of ACH, but super easy. Till we get there with blockchain, I feel like you're just not going to have that mass adoption, and the mass
Hmm.
adoption really help drive product as well.
Yep.
So I'm super bullish long term, but I feel like even in 5 years, do I see huge mass adoption? Probably not. But I think
Hmm.
that some of those things would be laid the foundation. But whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, in my mind, there's no doubt that we get there to where a major portion of the economy is built on blockchain.
I agree. Obviously, I suppose.
Exactly.
Um,
Singing to the choir. Yeah.
but one thing, and I'm interested here, especially given your kind of role and experience in the Fed and macro. But like, so I think you know, and this also plays into consumer protections and hacks, but it's just kind of like regulation. Like, what are the rules of
Yeah.
issuance? How are these? Who governs them? Who's liable? Because I do think you see plenty of Fortune 100 or bigger companies, from Starbucks to Disney to Mastercard, right? All with kind of blockchain teams and blockchain initiatives, and this is what we want to do, but then they'll probably bring it down to legal, and legal's like, well, you can't do this. Like, is this a
Yeah.
security offering? What is this? Um, but I definitely agree with you in terms of a quote unquote CBDC. I think we could get like a CBDC light, like USDC. Look at it as like basically a non-regulated money market fund.
Yeah.
So do we get some sort of like regulated overt, like maybe backed 100% by short duration treasuries, which basically makes it a CBDC anyway, but not really,
Yeah.
So, my thought on timing is like, I think that, and maybe it's at the same time, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that prior to any like congressional legislation pushed. But maybe you view it the opposite. I don't know.
I don't think in terms of like risk reward, if you're sitting in the Fed, I think that it will need to be like a big congressional push to get them to do anything. I think
Okay.
it'll go slow. Eventually, they'll get there, but um, I think you get a lot of the benefits, just using current stable coins. And I mean, the OCC came out with, guidance on how to make sure the stable coins are solid and effective, and didn't say which stable coins to use, but, audited by a reputable auditor and blah, 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 those
It's
types of
pretty clear,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, basic things that you'd want from not just a stable coin, but anything that you're putting money in and trusting.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I think that's a ways out until Congress pushes. And obviously, there's a lot of legislation pushing. But I would say that, I mean, I'm definitely disappointed, not surprised, but disappointed just in terms of the rules. It feels like, no one really knows the rules. It's confusing. You have CFTC and SEC jockeying and doing these different things. I'd say that puts us at a real disadvantage globally. When you look at, and I'm a little bit more U.S. focused, just given
Sure.
the companies I'm involved with today. But it really is, it's this friction that's happened in the U.S. where we're not sure the rules, and there's not like a single regulator that's looking at these things. But when you look at some of the other places, in some places backed off, but like Singapore and like some places in Europe and other areas. I mean, some of them have their act together and are really making pushes and giving their entrepreneurs a chance to say, hey, like do this, don't do this. Those are the goalposts, and now go run. Where, as and kind of alluded to, I mean, the toughest thing is saying like, here's the field. There's landmines everywhere, but we're not going to tell you where they are, and go start a business. It's just really, really difficult. So that is one thing that I hope. um, I'm skeptical, but I'm hopeful that will actually get solved
Yeah, I
more
mean,
quickly than like a CBDC or something. And I think that would be a
yeah,
huge win for the industry in the U.S.
massive one. Yeah, because I mean, you talk about adoption, and ultimately, this is all a demand side equation, and um, there's a lot of ways you can increase demand. You can do it organically, and that's going to be relatively slow, or you can get it to the point where, like, it's almost like Facebook now. I don't think anyone would be on Facebook if there weren't reasons why you had to be on Facebook. Like your neighborhood, listserv, or like your kid's school makes announcements on it, right? Like that's like pretty much only reason like most people
Yeah,
are still on it. So you need like, okay, well if I'm gonna, and again, it doesn't have to be so overt. It could be, your Starbucks app where your reward points are stored and transferable on a blockchain behind the scenes. And like, do you really know or care like what's going on in the background? Like, probably not. But um, But until
Yeah,
you get some clarity, that's not going to happen.
yeah,
It seems like
totally
every
agree.
conversation I have, like just finds its way to the regulatory complaining. Um, hopefully not for long though. But I mean, so the big thing with if you talk about Treasury, right? My understanding is, obviously the dollar is the global reserve currency and has been for a while, and that's obviously of the U.S. interest to maintain the dollar as the global reserve currency. What do you think about risk?
Yeah,
From whether it's China, if like a digital yuan or something along those lines. Does that pose a realistic threat, or is it just the kind of thing that Treasury is saying, well, we need to understand this better?
I think so. I think Treasury wants to understand it better. I think that we have the same threat regardless of digital. I mean, like, today
Yeah,
everything's digital anyway. It's just not a blockchain. But if you look at
sure.
like the dollar versus yuan versus euro, I mean, I'd go look more at like, if you like read Ray Dalio's stuff, like changing world order, like
Mhm.
big macro trends where that shifts. So I think there'll be political jockeying. You see the stuff with like Biden's recent announcements between the U.S. and China. But I
Mhm.
think the format of the dollar or of the yuan, like that doesn't influence it, in my opinion, although I could be
Yeah,
wrong. I think it's, political power, people accept dollar. So I think that argument kind of falls a little bit short for me. But I do think the Treasury, again, if you're looking at from their standpoint, if someone's, citizens are Venmoing versus, businesses are sending wires to each other versus people using, blockchain. They have real time payments coming out soon. I mean, they're probably less incentive because everything's digital anyway. Like
Mhm.
blockchain chain digital versus, Web2 digital. Like, do they care
Sure.
that much? Because it's all, dollars are being facilitated. In my opinion, probably not. Um, and I don't think that China gets like a massive advantage over having a digital yuan before a dollar.
Right.
Um, to me, that doesn't. It's much more political from my standpoint.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I certainly tend to agree with that. I do wonder, to the extent that at some point in the future, if everything is, um, blockchain exchanged, and you get introductions of, what are in essence layer one currencies. And we've had a couple interesting conversations on here. Narc as a really good analyst who's look, making makes a strong case, at least have value, something like ETH within the Ethereum blockchain as a currency, because in essence that's how it operates. Um, if you because everything is now very easily transferable. Like if I can just go into a wallet and exchange, dollars for euro or dollars for ETH. Um,
Yeah,
does there need to be a global reserve currency, or or can assets be
yeah,
denominated in many things simultaneously because they're all fully transferable? Like I could price any asset in airline miles if everything is fully transferable, I guess, right? So, but then
yeah,
I guess it all comes down to, well, I don't know. It's maybe it's just like a very circular discussion, but do we need a global reserve currency? I guess is the point in the future. And I don't know if that's something the Fed talks about either, or what your opinion is on it.
yeah. Yeah, again, all my opinions. Although I would say I haven't talked to anyone at the Fed about does there need to be a global reserve currency. Um,
Their answer is going to be yes. It's going to be the
yeah,
dollar.
there is going to be. It's very nice to be the reserve global currency. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
the
going to be king.
advantages. Exactly. But I don't know. It strikes me as definitely as friction costs come down and things can be moved, technology wise can be moved, more easily, and the actual cost of it comes down. Um, the question whether there's a single that things pivot off of, or there's like a basket, probably seems more likely to me. And maybe the basket's not, geopolitical. Maybe it's, ETH and Bitcoin and other things, or whatever the next version of the things are. Um, but I think it's interesting. I mean, you have certain states like, I I believe Colorado now takes tax payments in crypto. It's like,
Oh,
it's some of
really?
these things, those
Huh.
are like big shifts. Yeah. To say, hey, well, we're making this, accepting it as tax receipt, which is a big reason, obviously a big validator. Um, so I think it's super interesting where it goes. But if I had to guess, I would say there's probably be a bucket that are very highly used currencies. Some maybe issued by governments and be fiat, and some just be straight crypto.
Interesting. Interesting. Huh.
It's not exactly a great like line in the sand, like yeah, there's gonna be a basket of different
Well, I mean,
things. So
who the
it's
hell
not
knows? But yeah, no, I mean that
yeah,
does make a lot of sense, and I suppose ultimately, like it's just something that the market will dictate over time.
yeah,
In like in a more true market dynamic, I suppose. So,
I
um,
think that's right.
yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Well, I am personally really interested to see where everything with USC goes, and especially like the more creative side, because I think the engineering side is like fairly obvious, and a lot of places have that. And I would say like the certainly the business school side, especially around fintech and payments and
Yeah,
DeFi is fairly obvious. But like I'm more and more just like really fascinated by the potential around IP, entertainment, metaverse stuff, sure. But like I just think we're probably so
yeah,
far off of that being a reality in any
yeah,
scale. But yeah, the entertainment stuff, just because that, whether it's music or film, like it's just been so disrupted over the years, and I feel like there's just so much of a better opportunity for direct connection between artists and their fan base, right?
yeah.
So it's really cool. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what comes out of all this over time.
Thanks, thanks. Yeah, we'll keep you in the loop as we go through it. But we're super excited, and again, I mean, the students are amazing. I'm just trying to keep up with them as they run Blaze East Trail. So it's been really fun to be involved with.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Yeah, very cool. Well, good man. We're bad up on time, but it was I'm really excited for you and kind of what's going on. You're definitely at the cutting edge, and it's really cool. And yeah, look forward to having you on again soon.
All right, great talking to you. Have a great
All
one.
right. Thanks, James.
Thanks. Bye.